Hey Acers, this is Mason Emerson, your host and chief game master and sponsor and founder of the Ace Role Playing Club. And I want to welcome you to this edition. So, I've been listening to a conversation between Alt Shift X, who did a really cool, interesting video about Dune. I think they kind of just a few, but they're little niggling points, and so they're just they caught most of what I really love about Dune, and then made me think a lot about another YouTube channel I really like that is Quinn's Ideas, and all of that together kind of got me thinking about what I could do to kind of make Ace different than what I've been doing so far, and I think part of it is not putting my hands in front of my face, but anyway, I think what I could do slightly different is I can not only give game mastering advice, which is what I intend to do, because part of my goal is to make videos that will help you as game masters grow and become better. But also, I intend to start talking about my take on some of these settings and worlds and things like that are in Savage Worlds and in other role playing games that resonate and talk about my experience as a reader and as a lover of science fiction first, and then fantasy is actually kind of a second for me. And I will explain why. I say I love science fiction first because when I was 8, I think it was about 8, I was in second grade, my librarian got a really cool book, and I don't have my copy handy because, of course, we're packing up and moving things out. But there's a book called Wide Angle Lens, and it was a compilation of time and space travel stories that are about time and space travel, but they were gathered from many years of science fiction stories. So let's see if I can move this over a little bit, or move me over a little bit, so I can be a little better centered in this. But anyway, so the story that she read to us was Ray Bradbury's Sound of Thunder. And Sound of Thunder it's a good story in and of itself. But at 8 years old, I got it. And I went, oh. I got the whole story. I got the guy killing the guy at the end. I mean, I got the whole thing. Spoiler alert for a 50, 60-year-old story. So if you haven't read it yet, go out and read it. Anyway, I got it. And the very next week, I checked out the book, and I read it cover to cover. Then, not long after that, when I was about 9, I read Ender's Game. And that right there cemented me into science fiction. And my dad brought home the VHS of Dune, the 1984 version, with Kyle MacLachlan and all those guys in it, and I was hooked from that point on. I hadn't actually even encountered, and I didn't encounter The Hobbit until I was like 13. So science fiction had a good 5-year run on fantasy for me. So that said, my first love is science fiction. And I did read pretty much a lot of X-Men when I was a teenager. And reading X-Men, as a matter of fact, I'd read some at some friends' houses, but I really started collecting right around the Shadow King saga when my grandma took me to a comic store at a mall up in Davis County, and I was able to get some comics there, and I started reading them, and I started loving them, and I was there for X-Men Giant Size number 1, not Giant Size number 1, X-Men number 1 when they relaunched the whole franchise in the 90s. Not Giant Size number 1. Gosh, I wish I had that one. But, I never would have gotten rid of my comics, but at the time I wasn't reading my comics, and my wife talked me into it, and so I gave them to a good friend who I knew would protect them and take care of them, and he loves them now as much as I did. And so I was very grateful to be able to give them to Matt. But anyway, that sets my lens for stories, for role-playing games. I mean, the first role-playing game I ever bought was Rifts. and I bought it because of this really cool picture in an X-Men comic. It might have even been like 279 or whatever it was. The issue of Uncanny X-Men that had these two robots just duking it out in the streets. And I was like, I want to play that. And I'd also heard of Dungeons and Dragons, but I did grow up in the satanic panic of the 80s. And so my parents wouldn't let me touch Dungeons and Dragons. And when I got the Choose Your Own Adventure books that were Dungeons and Dragons, they made me take them back because those were satanic. And then there was a cartoon that was on TV. I can't believe that satanic thing's on TV. You're not watching that. So, I went over to my friend's house, and he had the red box Dungeons and Dragons sitting there, and in the early '80s, and they had a little cutout space in their downstairs space that they had to cover over with a garbage bag that they'd cut open, and it was like going with the wind, breathing in and out, and I was like, oh, there's a demon back there, or something like that. It's the same kid who introduced me to Motley Crue. And wherever you're at, Clint, I think I've changed a little bit. So, anyway, Dungeons and Dragons was right out. I got Rifts because it wasn't D&D. And I can go into a whole nother rant about how pissed off I was at Palladium for forcing me to buy the source book so that I could actually play the darn game. Progress onward and upward. So I want to talk about these settings, these worlds, these games, and the stories that you can tell with them. Because that's, again, really what a role-playing game is. It is essentially almost like a movie in your mind, which is the best place to have a movie because, have you ever read that book where you read it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest book I've ever read. I want to read more. It's over? What? No. And you saw the whole thing in your mind. And it was gorgeous and beautiful. And then you go see the movie and you're like, why'd they cast him? She doesn't look anything like that girl in the book. And that's part of the problem with movies in general. And unfortunately, in our society as citizens of the United States of America, we kind of view the movie as the pinnacle of what entertainment can be. And that's why I love role-playing games, is because role-playing games are so much more than just, hey, look at this person up here acting. I've acted. I've done theater. I've actually been in a couple little mini-movies. I was actually in a major movie when I was a kid. I was just an extra. So, anyway, I'm going to pause here for a second and take a drink. So, that was, I think role-playing games have a potential to be more than just a movie. They have the potential to be your own version of the story. And everybody else, you can kind of have a Rashomon kind of idea where everybody else is telling the story, and they get it in their own head. The game master sees one version of the movie, everybody else sees one other version of the movie, and everybody except the game master is playing one role in that movie. And then you're all putting it together, and you're the audience for the movie at the same time. You're doing like was said on that the late Savage Worlds Game Master podcast and Weekly Hangout or whatever it became. But they said that there are 3 reasons why you do anything in a role-playing game. 1, you're doing it because the character would do it. You tell the game master, my character does this because this is the way they would think. So if your character's heroic and runs into a burning building, that's the reason why it's a hindrance in Savage Worlds. If your character's heroic and runs into a burning building, then you are going to have a good character moment. And that's something you'd see on the screen or in a horror movie that they run into the shed filled with all the saw blades and pointy garden equipment. They do it because the character would do it. And then 2, you make also choices because you're a player playing that character. And sometimes the choices that you make, sometimes you're like, I'm not sending my character into that building. I want my character to survive. So no, I'm not doing that. Or no, I'm not going in that blade filled saw sharpened room. I'm gonna go to the car and try and start it. At least I'll follow that part of the horror trope. And then three, the other reason why we make decisions that we do is we're playing a game. Now, as game masters, I warn you right now, I agree again wholeheartedly with many of the game masters who have said this. There is the game, and then there is a book or a story. A book or a story turns out the way it does because of plot. Plot says so, and that is why it happens the way it does. The game is what you as a game master have planned to start them on. You have the gem, the germ, the core, whatever you want to call it. You have that little starting point, and your players are going to take it wherever they take it. In a recent game that ended for me, which was actually Dungeons and Dragons, and I will be the first to say Dungeons and Dragons is a blast. It's a great game. 5th edition really cleaned up a lot of stuff that 4th edition kind of screwed things up. And I guess they're kind of like the old statement we used to say about Windows updates, in that you don't install the even numbered ones. You wait until the next odd number one comes out, and it fixes the problems that were created in the even number one. And mind you, I never played 4th edition. That was in my dark period where I wasn't gaming it really at all. But I had 3rd edition. I never got 3.5 because I kind of fell out of gaming at about that point. I bought 3rd edition when the books were still cheap as dirt, like $20 a book. And in 3rd edition, holy cow, they fixed so many of the problems that I always had with D&D. And yes, I will be the first to admit that back when I was gaming with my buddies in 2nd edition, they'd say, okay, we're going to start a new campaign. And the first comment to me, because we were playing weekly, we would play every Friday night, every single Friday night. It was so much fun. And I will always love those guys. They will always have a place in my heart. And some of them I will always leave in that place in my heart. Some of them I still wish I could see again. So anyway, they would always say, no, Mason, you can't play a ninja. And one time I got around that by playing a ninja, but I made him a dwarf. So, that way I could still, and he was just like almost the antithesis of our player Jeremy, whom I still love. He's a good dear brother of mine. And Jeremy has a whole clan of these dwarfs, the Pacer dwarfs, that are just, they're all kind of indestructible. And then there's this cousin that we don't talk about, this little ninja cousin that we don't talk about. And so that's pretty funny. But anyway, this recent Dungeons and Dragons game, our game master did not intend it to go the way it did. He just said, I'm going to keep rolling with it. And we were actually referencing it this morning because somebody had put up a thing where an engineer had actually figured out that if you have this steel cage holding a portable hole, and that's attached as an arrowhead on an arrow, and you, in front of it on a kind of a spring-loaded thing, you have it's a bag of holding, a small bag of holding in a steel ring. It's held in a steel ring, and then there's a portable hole that's on a launcher system, basically, that you pull the safety screw out before you shoot the arrow, and then you have a wooden stick that will break on impact, and when it breaks, it shoots the portable hole into the bag of holding, which of course causes a huge explosion and sucks everything into, or a huge implosion and sucks everything into the ether plane. And the game we were playing was Planescape, and this is where the genius of a collective group of people comes into play. And I can still see this moment in my mind. There was this portal that was summoning these Modrons that were part of our problem into Sigil. and they were fighting against our side. We were fighting with hobgoblins and other chaotic things. But anyway, they were being summoned in, and there was this big chest full of metal or something that was fueling this portal. And when we went to try and pick it up and move it, turns out there was an immovable rod inside there. And we were like, "Oh man, this is just a horrible little thing. We're not going to be able to do that." And someone's like, "Wait, we got a bag of holding right here. Let's throw a portable hole inside." And so we blew the top of this roof off and sucked the whole thing, including ourselves, into the astral plane. That's where it is, not aether plane. Astral plane. I don't play D&D enough to actually know all the lore and everything, so I'm sure that there's a bunch of nasty comments already down below, but I don't care. I play games to have fun, and I run games to help other people have fun. And that's the key about being a game master, is that we do this for fun. And yes, there is a place in lives to have fun once in a while. And I'm sorry that this is just another talking head, another guy with a beard talking about role-playing games because he's been playing them for over 30 years. And I'm sorry that I don't have cooler, flashier title cards and things like that. And I'm not going to be able to show some of the images of the role-playing games and things that inspired me and things like that. At least not yet. I'm still learning how to do this. So bear with me. I'm still becoming a better online storyteller. So my main thing is that I'm going to kind of change the format up a little bit. I'm going to talk about the settings and the games that inspire me, that drive me forward, that really make me want to continue to be a game master, to continue to role play. And I will have to say that right now, and thus far, Savage Worlds by Shane Lacey Hensley is the end all. And it is the single best role-playing game that I've ever come across. And the reason why it's so good is because it is so versatile, because I can tell so many different stories with it. The great thing about Dungeons & Dragons is it gives you a Dungeons & Dragons feel. It gives you a chance to say, hey, this is Dungeons & Dragons. I'm starting off with a piddly little first-class character, and I'm going to have to get them up to level 3 before they even get interesting. And that's fine. That's the trope. That's what you're after. That's what you want to do. But Savage Worlds starts you off with the cool character that you wanted to play in the first place. You can actually do something in a combat, in a situation. You can actually make a character who can make a difference in the world. And that is why I play Savage Worlds. I played Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition. I played some 3rd edition. I played Legend of the Five Rings. I played 7th Sea. I didn't play Sovereign Stone, but I did read the book. And that's the one that became the codex, or not codex. What's the system? It's one of the systems that I've actually purchased because I want a Cortex system. So Sovereign Stone was like one of the first books of what it became. And then there's, I did pick up the Cypher system in digital, and I've also got Index Card RPG. And back when I was playing with my group there in Lehigh, we played the Storyteller system. Played it quite extensively, actually. Played it for many, many years. And actually, when I went to, when I was 18 and went and joined the Utah Valley State College UVSC role-playing game club, I don't remember if that was there when I was actually a student there. But anyway, when I went and joined them, they I got in on a game of Mage the Ascension, and that was the coolest, one of the best games that I've ever played. That one there held my number one spot until after my mission, when I came back and I got involved in a Mage the Ascension game, sort of. And it was actually Hero the Gifted is what my friend JC called it, and I still actually have some of the original papers from the printout of that, and it used primarily the superpowers in Hero and some of the powers from second edition Vampire the Masquerade. I never really cared for Vampire, but I always owned the book because it went with Hero, and I'm probably going to pick up another copy of it just so I can have it to go with my Hero the Gifted, because Hero was introducing superheroes into the world of darkness, and it was just it was cool. And I was still playing World of Darkness stuff with my friends on the outside, in the Lehigh group that had kind of, I mean, my first forming of a group happened when I was a teenager, and the first game that we really played was um, Tales from the Floating Vagabond, and my friend Hiram ran that, and then he went on his mission, and so Bjorn, myself, and Hiram's younger brother Sam, we kind of merged it, and Bjorn and I had also been playing around with Champions in his basement, and we kind of merged when we started playing Champions, and Champions is great. I like that. I like that game too. And then when I went on my mission, Bjorn and Sam started playing with some guys from Lehigh High School who were from Lehigh and Highland, and they merged into that group, and that's the group that I rejoined when I came back. Like I said, played some second edition D&D, but a lot of storyteller system, a lot of World of Darkness, and we kind of fizzled out and dissolved and went our ways around the time of Hunt of the Reckoning, and I was kind of bummed when the new World of Darkness rebooted and all that other stuff, because I still had cool books like Kindred of the East. I wouldn't have minded playing a Eastern Vampire, but I mainly had them as source books and reference materials. And that's unfortunately a curse of being a game master and being a role player in general, is that you tend to end up buying books that you know you're actually never going to use. Um, I did buy Legend of the Five Rings. I did write for Masters of Role Playing magazine, and that's where I read Sovereign Stone. And I also reviewed Seventh Sea. Seventh Sea was a blast. I ended up trying to run some of that. I also ended up trying to run some Cyberpunk. And all of these things, coupled with my literature background and the fact that I went on to get a degree in literature, they all built together to make my opinions and my thoughts about the games that I play. So, my first um, exposure, my first attempt at running a Savage Worlds game was Necessary Evil, and I love Necessary Evil. The concept, I need to probably reread the book and get it down better to try and just do the calculations in my head and turn it from deluxe edition into Savage Worlds Adventure Edition. But actually, I think no, it wasn't even deluxe edition version that I had. I had Necessary Evil clear back in the second edition, not second edition, but like Explorers Edition, I guess is what it was called. It was because Shane doesn't label the editions with numbers, but it was the second pass at it, and I never actually got that book. I do have the very first Savage Worlds book. That was pretty cool. And Shane took what he had done with Deadlands, because I have Deadlands. Actually, my son, even when he was a toddler and a little boy, he loved looking at the monster pictures in the back of the book. And then we moved forward. I got better with what I did, and then I stopped gaming for a number of years. And then, well, and part of it was I'd been running, like I said, I've been running Seventh Sea back in the day. I can't even remember what else we used to play, but there was a game group that I set up right after my wife and I got married, and it involved some of my old friends from Lehigh, some of my old friends from my theater life in Pleasant Grove. It involved several friends that I'd been associated with over the years, and through some politicking and some things that weren't so nice, Corey and I ended up leaving the group. And that's why we tried again here once we got out here to Daybreak. I tried again to start a group up, and that really didn't happen. And then I started up my my Dungeons and Dragons group. We started with 5th edition right about 2016, 2017, I think. And it's been great. We're still meeting once a month. We're going to meet again this coming Saturday. And it's really a fun time to spend with your friends, to make those friendships deeper, to have those foxhole moments where you face a threat or a stress combined together. And it's a good thing. So, welcome to the ever evolving part of the channel. I mean, guys, you're great. And I hope that as I talk about these settings and talk about what makes them cool, that we can make better game masters out of all of us. Please message me at my email address, which is down in the comments down below. I think I will still use Ace Role Playing Games at at gmail.com, or you can email me directly at nascentgm@gmail.com. I'm working on, well, I do have a Discord server. I can get you set up there if you decide you'd like to be a part of an Ace Club. And I will talk to you all tomorrow. Have a good day. And remember, this is Ace Role Playing Games. We're gaming for good.